So how do you replace Joe Biden? So I've made a few videos talking about how ridiculous it is that people are throwing around the idea of replacing Joe Biden without any sort of strategy behind it. What would that look like? Any kind of basis for why they think that would be a good idea? Just purely feelings. The entire left-wing partisan media has been totally on their feelings about this whole thing about replacing Joe Biden. I was on my feelings as well in the beginning. That didn't last very long. I felt like they should replace Joe Biden. I felt like it was obvious that anyone else would do better than him because he's just doing so bad. When I actually looked at the data, I realized that that actually didn't follow. However, there is a way that it could follow. And because on this channel, we like to dive a little bit deeper than what you might find from partisan mainstream media, and especially partisan independent media, I'm going to be the one, yet again, the pioneer to dive deeper than you're going to see in any other video, right? We are going to present a realistic strategy for how replacing Joe Biden could actually work. And I'm going to address the most important foundation or fundamental concept in terms of why this might be problematic, right? So like I said before, if you're going to talk about replacing Joe Biden, you have to address the versus Trump polls, right? There's no way any serious actor can have this conversation without addressing. Because if you're going to replace him with someone else, you need some kind of data in terms of how do we predict how that person would do, right? Your feelings would make you feel like Joe Biden is so bad that anyone else would do better than that, but that's feeling, right? We need to focus on the data. We need to find data to show us or to help us to extrapolate what it would look like to replace Joe Biden with somebody else and whether that be successful. And the data point we have are the polls. There are polls that show how Trump does against Newsom, Trump does against, all these other alternatives. And those polls demonstrate that it would be a very bad idea to replace Joe Biden, right? And that is based on just how the voters are communicating, what they would do if these were the choices. Now, what a lot of the left-wing media is doing, and it's not because they're not capable, not like I'm smarter than them, it's just partisanship, it's just tribalism. They're in a little bubble, they're in a little echo chamber. A lot of their content is based on what they're being fed by algorithms in their social media feeds. That's not how I operate, right? I am an extreme independent, right? Never been registered Democrat or Republican, and I'm a critical thinker, right? I'm an independent thinker. I think for myself, right? If they thought for themselves, many of them would probably come to similar conclusions, but they don't, right? They're all repeating what each others are saying. They're all being inspired by their social media feeds, right? So that being said, what you're seeing in left-wing media, the only polls that they mention, if they even mention any polls, is they talk about polls in terms of people looking at Joe Biden as being incompetent, whether he is able to be the president. I think there's some poll that shows some number of 72% of people think Joe Biden is too old or something like that. That's irrelevant, right? Imagine if 100% of people thought that Joe Biden was too old, but 100% of registered Democrat voters would vote for Joe Biden over Trump, right? And not just that they would vote. I mean, they actually, I guess we want to look at the people who are actually going to vote, right? So look at the high probability. Like these are the people who are most likely to come out to vote. And if you have enough numbers of people that would come out to vote saying that they would vote for Biden, it doesn't matter if 100% of them think that Joe Biden is incapable of doing his job. Like that is irrelevant, right? Because your assessment of Joe Biden's capabilities is a separate subject from when the election comes, who will you vote for? Elections are all about votes. The only poll that really matters, essentially, the most critical poll is who would you vote for, right? If the election day comes up, first of all, are you going to vote, right? And who are you going to vote for, right? You may not like the options. You may think Joe Biden is crazy or Joe Biden might last his 4-year term. But for whatever reason, if you will be choosing to vote for him anyway, that's what matters, right? So that's the poll that matters. So the fact that, again, this is why I say everyone's following each other, right? You go across the board, whether it's Humanist Report, the Young Turks, whoever else has been put on his content, they all show the same statistics. Because again, they're all it's like just clones of each other, right? They have the social media feeds, which is, basically, it's picked up on their sort of biases, right? Their ideology, and it's feeding them things that it thinks that they want to see, right? So they're all getting the same polls about how people don't like Biden or they think he's incompetent or he's irrelevant. You're still watching this video, so obviously you enjoy it. So click on the like button, show some support. It's not very popular being objective and calling out both sides. So this channel will never be a large channel. So I need all the support I can get because I'm always going to stay true and give people the raw truth, which there's not a huge market for this type of content. So if you enjoy it, if you're one of the very few that actually appreciates objective, raw truths, hearing things that might be uncomfortable, having your ideas challenged, click on the like button. The only thing that matters when it comes to an election, right, is how many people will come out to vote and who will they vote for. That's it. So again, the most critical poll is the versus polls. None of them are talking about. However, there is a way that you can replace Joe Biden and have it actually work, and in defiance of those polls, right? So we acknowledge the polls show that I think Kamala Harris, I was shocked about this. Again, it's not about feelings, right? I would, if you ask my opinion, I would say Kamala Harris would be worse than Joe Biden in terms of, if you put her, like, you're definitely going to lose. But according to the polls, that's not what the voters are saying. And I have to go based on the voters, right? The voters are the ones who are going to decide. And if the voters, like Kamala Harris a little bit better, I mean, it's it's almost irrelevant because I think she leads him by like 1 point. So that's almost like they're tied. But if that's what it is, that is what it is. And I'm going to go based on reality and facts. But here's the way I can defy the polls and replace Joe Biden and have it make sense in terms of being able to beat Donald Trump. So even though the polls indicate that basically Joe Biden is the best option to beat Donald Trump, I'm shocked at that. But you got to look at the American people, you got to look at the voters in terms of why they feel that way, right? Because they're the ones who are telling us that, they wouldn't prefer. I mean, if you ask them generically, I think they would say they would like a younger candidate. But when you actually show them the options, they're kind of like, I like Biden a little bit better than that guy, right? So go talk to them, right? But we can't ignore them because they're the ones who are going to do the voting. So anyway, this is the way you could replace Biden and make it make sense. And here's how. And notice I'm dealing with the facts, right? I'm going to address the reality and the facts. I'm going to address the polls and how I'm going to give an explanation of why I'm able to defy the polls, right? They're not giving you any tactic. Look at all the left-wing channels. They're not giving a specific person to replace Joe Biden with, and they're not explaining the biggest challenge in terms of the versus polls. They're just simply throwing it out there. You should replace him. It's obvious. Okay, this is how you do it. First of all, let's address the polls. I have to look at the polls and I have to consider why, right? I got to consider why. Why is it that even though I'm sure if I asked most people, they would say they want a younger candidate, Newsom is younger, and he's experienced. I think he would do a much better, I shouldn't say think, I'm sure he would do a much better debate performance. I think he could eat Donald Trump alive, potentially. So everything sounds good. If I go based on feelings, that's an obvious winner. But that's not what the polls are showing. But the thing is, I would do the analysis of why. Why would it be that Biden would do better than Newsom? I think it would be name recognition, right? If you're not engaged in politics, you don't even know who Newsom is, right? So it's kind of like, this is why these companies, they do all these like branding exercises where they want to have their name be everywhere. I'll give a perfect example, and it works because my first tire that I bought was Goodyear. Why did I buy Goodyear tires? I didn't know nothing about tires. I never bought tires before, but through my entire childhood, right, they had strategically placed their tires all over toys and cartoons and whatever. So when it came to making a decision on a tire, I went with what I knew. Right, and I didn't really know because again, I didn't know anything about tires, but the brand was familiar, right? The Biden brand is familiar. Everybody knows who Joe Biden is, right? So they may not like Joe Biden, but they feel like they know Joe Biden, and people are more comfortable going with what they know, what is familiar. Newsom, if you're not into politics, you're not in California, you might not have ever heard his name. By the way, I'm shocked that there's a ton of people who've never even heard of AOC. So that's to give you a perspective. Those of you guys that are into politics like myself, realize that normal people, there's a huge divide in terms of what you know and what they know. I mean, someone as divisive as AOC, right? She's very popular on the left within progressive circles. She's a common villain on the right. There's so much content about AOC. She has so many followers, I think millions of followers. But yet average, regular people, you say, hey, do you know who AOC is? And I was shocked. Multiple people I spoke to in the real world, they have no idea who AOC is, right? These same people are not going to know who Newsom is, right? I think AOC has a bigger profile than Newsom, I think. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but they're not going to know who Newsom is. And they're going to want to buy Goodyear tires like the way I bought Goodyear tires, right? So once we take the time to do an analysis of the reason for the polls, why is it that the alternatives don't do better than Joe Biden? And we come to a theory, right? This is my theory. I don't know if this is actually the real deal, but at least I'm giving you a theory. Whereas partisan left-wing media is not giving you a theory. They're just saying dump Joe Biden. It's obvious, right? With no basis. But I'm giving you a theory. My theory is that they don't do as well because of the name recognition issues in general. In general, that's not the only reason. Some of the candidates that are alternative, like they have their own baggage, right? Like if you talk about like a Kennedy, right? Kennedy's got a lot of anti-vaxxer baggage, so he's got the name recognition, better name recognition for sure. But it's the anti-vaxxer stuff is going to turn off a lot of Democratic voters. So once we consider these things, right, we know what the problem is with the alternatives. We know why they trail Joe Biden. And then we know that the strategy of replacing Joe Biden would require us to to address that issue. So we need to identify someone who doesn't have a ton of baggage, which is going to be the reason for some of the other alternatives not doing well versus Trump. So find someone that doesn't have a ton of baggage. And then the other issue is we're going to have to make them known. We're going to have to sell them, right? So for example, Governor Newsom, if we're going to make it Governor Newsom, then we need to introduce him to the world. We need to sell, not to the world, but to the country. We'll need to sell him to the country, right? We need to get his name recognized. So that's going to require a little bit of coordination. I don't want to say unethical coordination, but some level of coordination between the campaign and the media, right? So they need to have him out there doing as many interviews as possible, have him maybe doing rallies or whatever it is. They need to really sell this guy. And it can't just be, because, you had people that were trying to sell themselves who were also running for president. So they had a campaign, they were doing marketing efforts, but whatever they were doing was not enough. And I know a lot of it is a money issue, right? So even some of those alternatives who might actually do better than Joe Biden if they could get in front of enough people's faces, but they fail to do so, and that's part of the problem. So whoever it is needs massive levels of support. The media needs to do their job and really, really show the country who this person is, have a lot of interviews, whatever. They just we need to have them have a significant name recognition where we go across the country and we say their name and the average person knows who this person is and has, some level of positive sort of impressions. Yeah, I saw him in that interview and he made some really good points and I like the debate that he did with whoever or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So if you can do that to where this person now we've defeated the name recognition issue, I think the thing that the left-wing media has a feeling about can become a reality, right? If we can get the country to recognize the name of, I don't say names because names is a problem. If we have a whole bunch of different people muddying the waters, there needs to be we need to pick someone and the focus needs to be on this person. We don't want distractions and other people and trying to compete and all that kind of stuff. So if we can get the average person to recognize this person's name and have some level of positive view of this person, and they don't have a bunch of baggage as well, and also if they can clearly, present the stakes in terms of, listen guys, if we don't pull this off, this is what's going to happen if Trump wins, right? I think in that scenario, you would need to redo the polls, right? And the polls, I think at that point would reflect that candidate, whether it's Newsom or other, is now leading Joe Biden significantly. But you have to address the reason why they're trailing Joe Biden first to make them lead Joe Biden so that it actually makes sense, because now you're presenting a scenario or tactic that can result in a win. Right? If you're just going to simply swap him out with somebody else, that's not going to work. Now, Kamala Harris is complicated because she's leading Joe Biden, but it's insignificant. I think it's like 1 point. I think most people know who she is, so she's got the name recognition, but she's not very well liked. She's kind of annoying. She's kind of fake. Which is why, even though she has a name recognition, she's not really doing much. So see, it's not just name recognition. You can't just throw somebody out there and like, hey, look at this person, right? Again, there needs to be the lack of the significant baggage. Kamala Harris' significant baggage, I think, is she's annoying the way she comes across and the fakeness, and it's just she leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So her having name recognition doesn't work for her. We need two things: the name recognition and somewhat of three things: name recognition, somewhat of a positive image, and then the lack of any significant baggage where it's just turning voters off, right? So if the reality is, and I don't know if that's the case or not, if the reality is that most Democratic voters, knowing the full scope of Gavin Newsom, if they would look at him and say he's cool, say like, I could vote for him, right? If that's the reality, I think they can win, right? That's not the reality for Kamala Harris. Right. However, another consideration is if you're just asking someone who they would vote for in isolation, I think it's more difficult. But when you present a scenario of what another Trump term would look like, and you present like, these are the stakes. So I think it's very important how you ask the question. If you ran a poll and you present that, you're like, listen, This is what Trump is looking to do. This is what they're talking about. This is Project 2025, blah, 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 blah. Right? Joe Biden's not looking too good. If Newsom replaces him, would you vote for him? Right? If you pose things in that way and you do a versus poll in that way, so considering what Trump's about to do and this and that and blah, 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 are you going to vote for Biden? Would you vote for Biden? Like, how likely are you to vote for Biden? And you look at the numbers. Same question. What about Newsom? What about this person? What about that person? What about Kamala Harris? I think if you phrase it in that way, I really want to see what those numbers show. But if those numbers are showing high support for an alternative, then that is definitely the way to go. Because whatever cost that you get from the messiness of, dumping Biden would be compensated for by the gains from another candidate. That's if that candidate shows a significant lead. If you're showing like a 10-point lead over Biden, like Newsom leads by 10 points when you phrase things that way, when you present the stakes, I think any damage from the swapping would be compensated for. But anyone that's even anywhere close to Joe Biden, if they're anywhere close to Joe Biden, I think the net effect is going to be negative, right? Because again, you're gonna take a hit. It's very messy swapping out the president, at this late stage. It's like a Cornel West type move. So it's not a good look. You're going to take a hit. So the amount of points you gain needs to be a net positive, right? It needs to compensate for the losses from the swap, right? And then it also needs to give you a significant margin. So even after you account for, you're going to lose 3 points because of the swap, there needs to be, but you're going to gain a net, 10-point or a net 8-point advantage to where it'll be worth it, because now you're in a much better situation than you are now with Joe Biden being the top of the ticket. But anyway, that's the way I would see it. You identify that person that doesn't have the crazy baggage, has some level of positive, impression on the voters, and they don't have a lot of baggage. And you need to get them in front of the American people in a massive, massive way. So that's going to require media cooperation, which is one of the reasons why a lot of progressives can't get anywhere, because they don't have the money. And the media is not going to cooperate with putting a progressive out there sufficiently. So they need to have a powerful grassroots movement where they can overcome that. But for normal, regular candidates, more centrist type candidates, I believe the media can and potentially will give them the coverage they need so that they have the recognition. So when election day comes, people are like, okay, we can't have Trump be president. And that Newsom guy seems cool. I got some issues with him, but definitely rather him than the other guy. So I'm inspired to vote because of the threat, and also because we have an option that is palatable, right? So that's the place that we would need to get to. And again, the other issue is, people trying to take advantage of this and being very selfish, and like when they try to swap Biden, jumping in like, I'm going to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't try. I mean, if you think that you can win and you have a lot to offer, sure, try, but be very quick with it. Don't spend a lot of time, because we need to quickly focus on a certain candidate, right? This is late in the game. We don't have time to waste. We don't have time for months and months of back and forth and, Kennedy trying to do this and somebody else trying to do something else and Newsom trying to do something else. They need to quickly filter through, maybe do some kind of a poll or debate event or something. You need to select the person very quickly and do it very wisely, addressing the points that I mentioned. And then everybody needs to line up and focus on, this particular candidate, promoting them from the, and this should really be on the campaign, right? Because the media, most of our media is propaganda, so this is what they do anyway, but they shouldn't be trying to promote a candidate. Definitely inform the people. The people need to know. That's your job, to inform the people. So let them know, but you shouldn't be making an extra effort to really promote the candidate. Just do the news, let people know what's up, right? But the campaign needs to be the ones to push the candidate, right? So that means, don't wait for the media to schedule interviews. You need to be hammering them and making a lot of interview requests. We want to come and talk about this. We have an event. We want you guys to come and cover this. Doing your press releases, whatever it is, you need to be just hammering. And the media needs to be conducive to it in terms of them doing their job, as opposed to them leading it. Like, they shouldn't be promoting a candidate. Just inform us and leave it at that. But the candidate, the campaign needs to be the ones pushing it. And it's kind of weird, because this is the Biden campaign. So you're talking about the Biden campaign promoting an alternative. But if the threat to democracy is what you suggest, then it should be all hands on deck. No, that stuff shouldn't matter. Anyway, this is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. You appreciate you know, me diving in and talking about these things that no one else is talking about, going a little bit deeper and actually thinking about these things and not just going along with the crowd and following social media. If you appreciate that kind of content, again, click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell, be well. This is Debate Me channel.